We begin tonight with the galvanizing of the Democratic Party in the wake of the loss of Massachusetts Senator Ted Kennedy this week. Senator Kennedy, of course, defined health care as the cause of his life. Whether or not his inspiration will be enough to bring Democrats together to finally pass the kind of health reform that Senator Kennedy fought for so many years, of course, remains to be seen. But if Democrats do fail at reforming health care now, they'll have only themselves to blame, because as the Democrats in the wake of Kennedy's death have at least tried to pull together on health reform, Republicans have really fallen apart. Today, the only nationally elected Republican figure in the country, the head of the Republican Party, Michael Steele, gave an interview to National Public Radio in which he really struck out swinging, appearing utterly confused and tied up in knots over the most basic issues of health care, what his position is, what he has said in the past, and what he's now trying to unsay. You have to hear this. Here he is, speaking with NPR host Steve Inskeep. This is just a portrait of bewilderment.
Within a couple of paragraphs of writing, "We need to protect Medicare," you write that you oppose President Obama's, quote, plan for a government-run health care system.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you're a veteran public policy official. You're aware that Medicare is a government-run health care program.
Yeah, and look how it's run. And that's my point. Take Medicare and make it writ large across the country, because here we're now. How many times have we been to the precipice of bankruptcy for a government-run health care program?
It sounds like you don't like Medicare very much at all, but you write in this op-ed that you want to protect Medicare because it's politically popular. People like Medicare. That's why you're writing to protect Medicare. People may like Medicare, and liking a program and having it run efficiently is sometimes two different things. Medicare is what it is. It's not going anywhere. So let's focus on fixing it so that we don't every 3, 5, 10 years have discussions about bankruptcy and running out of money. I'm still having a little trouble with the notion that you're going to write that you're going to protect Medicare, that you're going to preserve this program to make sure that this government-run health care system stays solvent in the long term, and yet you are opposing, quote, government-run health care.
Wait a minute. Exactly. No, I hate government-run health care. But since we already have it, you better not mess with it, even though it's totally broken. Woo. Strike one. Strike two, Mr. Steele's decision to go in the same interview with a fact-free declaratory statement about what the health reform debate has been like so far.
Look, no one's trying to scare people with sound bites. I mean, I've not done that, and I don't know any of the leaders in the House and the Senate that have done that.
Okay. I understand the need to make short declarative statements in order to sound like you're not confused anymore, but don't make them about something like this. Because if there's one thing we can all absolutely, positively, left, right, and center agree on, scare tactics have been used.
We should not have a government program that determines you're going to pull the plug on grandma.
Republicans have a better solution. It will not put seniors in a position of being put to death by their government.
A lot of people are going to die. This program of government options is going to kill people.
No one's trying to scare people with sound bites. I don't know any leaders in the House and the Senate who have done that. Yeah, strike two. Then there was strike three, a Republican Party mailer being sent across the country, which surfaced online today. It's called the 2009 Future of American Healthcare Survey, and it claims to be a friendly questionnaire about healthcare sent by, yes, RNC Chairman Michael Steele, who promises that, of course, no one's trying to scare people. The survey questions about health reform include, quote, "It has been suggested that the government could use voter registration to determine a person's political affiliation, prompting fears that GOP voters might be discriminated against for medical treatment in a Democrat-imposed health care rationing system." Does this possibility concern you? See, if health care reform were really a secret plot to kill Republicans, which it totally might be, wouldn't that scare you? But really, no one's trying to scare people, I swear. In the horrible Hobbesian, no rules, no shame, free-for-all of lies, overstatements, and outrageous mischaracterizations that has been the healthcare debate this summer thus far, this health reform is a secret plot to kill Republicans lie, offered up by the Republican Party itself, was so bad that the Republican Party actually had to apologize for it today. They called it, quote, inartfully worded. Apology or not, Democrats do seem increasingly aware that the Republican Party as a whole really isn't here to help on health reform. Now the question is, will any Republicans decide that they would like health reform more than they'd like to stand with their party on this issue? Joining us now is Democratic Congressman Anthony Weiner of New York. He sits on the House Energy and Commerce Committee and the Health Subcommittee. Congressman Weiner, it's nice to see you not on a Friday.
It's my pleasure. Thanks. Welcome to Queens.
Thank you. Are you standing in a median right now?
No, it just seems that way. It's Utopia Parkway.
Oh, very good.
But I'm thin enough they wouldn't hit me anyway.
All right, fair enough. Listen, you and I have talked a number of times about misinformation about health reform coming from Republican members of Congress. I now have to ask your reaction to the Republican Party itself sending this survey to people asking whether they think health care reform might be a plot to deprive Republicans of medical care. What's your reaction?
Well, the Republicans are so furious about trying to stop any type of reform at all that they're about to self-immolate. It seems like they'll say or do just about anything. You know, you have the chair of the Republican National Committee putting out the most vigorous defense of a single-payer health care plan I can imagine, and then quickly running away from that very notion. And then today, the idea that your voter registration form is going to be used to somehow to pull the plug on Granny. Look, the bottom line here is that the Republicans and many folks on the right fundamentally don't believe that government should do anything to try to solve the problems of this country. That's why they lost the House, they lost the Senate, they lost the White House. But now there's a team in charge in the Democrats who are not getting everything exactly right, and I've had some problems with some of the steps we've taken. But to say that we don't need to try to fix health care and that somehow this is an assault on our Constitution or on our way of life is just absurd, and I think more and more Americans are seeing that.
As we're coming down to the end of the August recess, is it your sense that Democrats have realized that they may have to go it alone on health care reform, that they may not get any Republican votes, at least from where they were expecting them? And do you think that any Republicans are leaning towards supporting health reform?
Well, let me just make it clear that I think there are a lot of Republican citizens of this country who understand this problem a lot better than their leaders do. But it's also fairly clear that the Republicans in the Senate and the House think that the only way that they can gain any traction and get back into the majority is by simply voting no on everything and being a general no party. And if that's the case, we can't afford to just keep sitting around negotiating with ourselves. I can't remember the last time I saw a Republican member of the United States Senate stand up and say, here are the things I'd like to have in a bill. All I've heard them say is what they're against.
Do you think that Senator Kennedy dying this week is going to have a practical impact on what a final bill ultimately looks like? He, of course, was the chair of the Senate Help Committee. Is it possible that that bill would gain more traction now as opposed to the one that's been held up for so long in the Finance Committee?
I think the act of legislating in this issue is going to be just as hard with or without Senator Kennedy of blessed memory. But I will say this. I think that more and more people reading about Senator Kennedy's life, reading about things like the Americans with Disabilities Act didn't just happen. It was widely opposed by many in Congress. The idea that Medicare itself was opposed by many people in Congress and many people today, and that these things had to overcome similar types of scare campaigns that we're seeing today. Just seeing that history written for people and seeing them have a chance to see it on their local television and read about it in their newspapers, I think it is going to improve the conditions for this debate. I think a lot of Americans realize that what Senator Kennedy offered was ideas on how to improve people's lives, and that's what this discussion should be about.
From that big picture perspective, you, of course, have championed the idea that a single-payer option, a single-payer program ought to still be on the table. It ought to be one of the things that we are discussing when we're thinking about how to reform health care. How goes your fight to keep the option of a single payer alive?
Well, I would point out that the notion of Medicare for all Americans was something that Senator Kennedy was carrying in the United States Senate. Increasingly, as we see arguments like the one that you had carried out on your show at the top, you know, people like the head of the Republican National Committee arguing on one hand that he loves a single-payer option, on the other hand he loves it only up to a point, has gotten people to think about what makes Medicare a success. Sure, it has financing problems, but we know, for example, that every dime that goes into Medicare goes into health care and doesn't go into profits and overhead. So we're gaining traction. Now, it's going to be tough, but frankly, it's going to be tough to get anything done. But I'm comfortable making an argument. You know, I want to step back and watch Steele argue with himself for a while. That seems to be the best case for single-payer health care.
Democratic Congressman Anthony Weiner of New York, thanks again for your time tonight, and make sure somebody gets you safely out of traffic there, okay?
Thank you.
Thanks.